You prayed, you showed up, you did everything right, and then the silence came. That is not what anyone told you would happen. They told you ask and you will receive. They told you God is always near, so why does heaven feel like an empty room right now? And the thing nobody warns you about is what the silence starts to say about you, that maybe your faith was never real, that maybe you are the problem. What if the silence is not a punishment? What if it is something far older and far more honest than the version of faith you were handed? We are going to stay in the dark with you for a while before we move toward any light, because rushing the answer is how trust gets broken again. Feelings of emptiness are documented across human experience as a real condition, not a spiritual deficiency. Psychologists link them to grief, loss, and the collapse of meaning. Emptiness is described clinically as a sense of generalized boredom, social alienation, and deep apathy. It arrives after significant loss. It is not a character flaw. But here is the part that matters. When that emptiness happens inside a faith life, something specific occurs. The silence stops feeling like absence and starts feeling like rejection. You are not the first person to sit in this room. You will not be the last. The silence of God has a longer history than most churches are willing to name out loud. If you have been showing up, praying, reading, attending, and still feel nothing, subscribe now so you do not miss what comes next in this conversation. C.S. Lewis wrote a book called The Problem of Pain in 1940. In it, he wrestled with why a good and powerful God allows suffering and silence to coexist. Lewis was not writing from a safe academic distance. He was writing as someone who had looked at the evidence and still found the silence deeply uncomfortable. His argument was not that pain and silence are good. His argument was that they are not sufficient reasons to abandon the belief that something real is on the other side. That is a very different thing from being told to smile and trust harder. Lewis sat with the discomfort. He named it. That mattered. What is your silence actually costing you? Not in theory, right now. What have you stopped doing because the quiet felt like permission to give up? Here is the real problem. It is not that God is silent, it is that silence was never part of the deal you were sold. The version of faith most people receive is built on transaction. You do your part, God does his, prayer in, answer out. That is the framework, and it is fragile. Because when the transaction stops working, you do not just feel disappointed, you feel deceived. And deception lands differently than disappointment. Deception makes you question the entire structure, not just one answered prayer, the whole thing, whether any of it was ever real. And then comes the shame, because you were taught that doubt is weakness, that if you just believed more, the silence would end. So you tried to believe more, you pushed harder, you performed the faith louder, and still nothing, so now it must be you. That cycle. Perform, fail, shame, perform harder, fail again, shame deeper. That is not a faith problem. That is a wound being kept open by a broken framework. But something even deeper is underneath all of this, and most people never get it named for them, so they carry it unnamed for years. The mechanism underneath the silence is this. We learn early that connection requires performance, and we accidentally bring that same rule into our relationship with God. We believe, without knowing we believe it, that love must be earned, that presence must be deserved, that silence is always withdrawal. But consider this, between two people who trust each other completely, silence is not emptiness. It is one of the deepest forms of presence that exists. The silence between strangers is cold. The silence between the trusted is warm. The question is not whether there is silence. The question is which kind you believe you are in. And that belief was formed long before you ever opened a Bible. It was formed in your earliest experiences of being left without explanation. So when God goes quiet, your nervous system does not just feel theological uncertainty. It feels the old thing, the familiar thing, abandoned again. Naming that is not weakness. Naming that is the beginning of something more honest than the performance was ever able to produce. Now we can talk about what God actually says, not the proof text, not the highlighted verse used to shut down the question, the full picture. The full picture includes people in Scripture who sat in extended silence from God and did not receive explanations. Job, David in the Psalms, Elijah under the juniper tree. None of them were told their silence proved their failure. None of them were sent away. The silence in each case was followed by presence, not condemnation. C.S. Lewis argued in The Problem of Pain that human pain is not sufficient reason to reject a good God, but he went further than argument. He described the setting. The setting matters. Pain and silence do not mean what we assume they mean. They sit inside a larger story we cannot see from inside the middle of it. Here is what the silence is almost never doing. It is almost never withdrawing love. It is almost never punishing. Those are the interpretations of someone standing inside the wound. The open loop from the beginning of this video closes here. Why does heaven feel empty when you are told God is always near? Because near does not always sound like near. A fog does not disappear because you walk louder through it. A fog lifts when conditions shift. You are not walking wrong. The conditions were simply not yet ready. And there is something that waits on the other side of real silence that is not available through performed certainty. Something quieter, more durable, more your own. That is not a theology of earning. That is a description of how deep things form, slowly, in the dark, without noise, under pressure you did not choose. God is not grading your silence. God is not measuring the quality of your endurance. That framework belongs to the transaction model, and the transaction model was always too small. What if the history of this channel is worth sharing? If this conversation reached someone you know who is sitting in silence right now, pass this video to them. So, one thing, not a list, one thing you can actually do tomorrow morning inside your silence. Stop trying to generate feeling. Stop trying to sense something. Stop filling the silence with more words, more worship music, more effort to break through. Instead, sit in it for 5 minutes, just 5, no agenda, no performance, no measurement of whether anything happened, 5 minutes of honest stillness. And before you sit, say one sentence out loud, not a prayer, not a request, just this: I am here even though I feel nothing, and that is going to have to be enough today. That sentence is not a failure of faith. It is the most honest prayer most people have ever offered. Honest presence over performed certainty, every time. Do not measure the 5 minutes for results. Do not evaluate it afterward. Just let it be what it was. You showed up. That is the whole thing. The silence of God has ended for people who sat exactly where you are sitting. Not because they fixed something, because they stopped running from the quiet. You are not broken. You are not failing. You are in one of the oldest experiences in the entire record of faith, and you are still here. That already means something. More conversations like this come out regularly. Subscribe, and you will not face the next hard question alone.